Welcome to Inside the Birds pregame live, presented by Garage Beer. It's beer tasting beer. Find yours at drinkgaragebeer.com. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everyone. Will it be a merry day for the Birds today? Well, the Eagles have already qualified for the playoffs, and they still have the best chance of winning the NFC East. But for a team that's got so much going for it, the vibes are certainly not merry this week and perhaps today as they come home to the Link for a Christmas Day showdown against a division rival New York Giants. First game between the Eagles and Giants this season, and they do so, the Eagles, carrying a 3-game losing streak. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside my Inside the Birds co-host Adam Caplan. Joining us, as always, is former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant. And from NFL Films, our tape breakdown master, Greg Cosell. Gentlemen, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. I hope you've all had a great one, and I look forward to talking some Eagles with you guys today. Everybody good?
Let's do it.
All good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to say, I think, even as an objective reporter, I think I speak for Eagles fans when I say the Birds could make today not so merry and bright, or maybe they get something great for their fans in the stocking with a win over the Giants. Jay, I want to start with you. We have talked about leadership a lot this past week. In this situation, this Eagles team is not a young team. Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelce, Brandon Graham, a lot of veterans, right? A lot of Lane Johnson to spread the message. So would you imagine that this is the kind of week where those guys had to step up a little bit vocally as, you know, you come back to Philadelphia, the walls are caving in, everybody can't stay. You know what it's like. Do you think that it was important for them this week to be a little bit more exertful in their leadership?
Yeah, players that have been here a long time, guys with Super Bowl pedigree to step up and say something, but also to the coaching. I think this is a week that you have to reel in your players because they're starting to allow the outside noise to dictate to them things that they should not, right? Jalen Hurts coming out in presser saying that he doesn't feel the commitment, and A.J. Brown with his words, and then there's anonymous guys leaking stuff the week before. There's a bunch of smoke around this team, and usually that's a sign of a team that's imploding. So you're going to expect veteran leadership to step up and say something, and also to have tough and stern coaching, especially this week, and have the guys stick together and not go against each other with all the changes that are taking place.
Sure. And it's interesting. The Eagles have a lot of Super Bowl champion pedigree on their roster. You could look at the Eagles coaching staff, and outside of Matt Patricia, you wonder how many situations like this, where they have to take the bull by the horns, whether it's Nick Sirianni or anyone else, right, and have that kind of same experience. So I think it's a benefit for the Eagles to have such a core, such a nucleus of players who've been there and done that before. Now, the Eagles are 10-4, despite the fact that they've lost 3 straight games. The Giants, they recently had a 3-game win streak. It was snapped in their last game when they got pounded by the Saints. They're just 5-9 and coming off an 18-point loss in New Orleans. In fact, 7 of the 9 Giants losses this year have come by double digits, with 6 coming by 18 or more points. But you guys know this. When it comes to NFC East showdowns, forget about the records. We say this with Eagles, Washington every time. Doesn't really matter what the records are. Doesn't matter how the teams are playing. These games, you throw that stuff out the window because it's an NFC East battle. We want to thank everybody who's watching this show right now, the holidays, with their families. Hope everybody's having a good time. Please share and like the show on whatever platform you're viewing it on, whether it's YouTube or anything else. If it is YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. We appreciate it. If you want to try to submit a question, we'll try to get it answered during the show today. All right. I want to thank today's sponsors of the show, including HelloFresh. Winter's here. I mean, it's not here, but I think it's just a couple of days away, if not yet. We know that it gets dark soon. People are with their families right now. No one has time to sit out and plant and make meals. That's why we love HelloFresh. They deliver farm fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to our doorstep. No wasting time at the grocery store, because America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy, efficient, and affordable. With HelloFresh, the shopping's already done. The perfect amount of ingredients arrive with step-by-step recipe cards, and it doesn't get more efficient than that. And HelloFresh saves you time and money. It's 25% less expensive than takeout, so you'll get a home-cooked meal without digging deep into your wallet. Do not forget about taste and selection. They got chicken, they got steak, they got other meat, they got seafood, vegetarian meals. They offer everything. So go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use that promo code 50Eagles, all one word, for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the code 50Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right, we'll get into a big picture look at this game today, Adam. I've been saying all week, and I know there's always a difference between how we look at it or fans and players look at it, but I kind of think that this might be a rare game where style points might matter. The Eagles don't take care of business, or they have a very sloppy win over a bad Giants team coming off of the fact that they're coming off a 3-game losing streak. I don't know if you really feel so great about them.
Well, I think I look at it this way. If you go back to the games like the Dallas game, the first game at home where they barely won, Dallas should have won the game. They choked that one. They cowboyed, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
The Chiefs game where they got down at the half and won. Same score in the Buffalo game. They both were down at 17-7 at half, and they came back to win, which shows a lot of heart and being able to fight back, getting off to this bad start. So as you fast forward here to a lesser opponent, one that they've owned for several years, this is a game they should dominate. Now, I know from a business standpoint, talking to people who work from the Eagles on that side, that look, they love to see a great win. They want the positivity coming back. But from a player and coach's standpoint, it's an execution standpoint. And they've just not, quite frankly, guys, when is the last time from pillar to post they've played a complete game? Maybe the Miami game in week 7? That's probably the best game, one of the best games of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you can give them credit for the Dallas game that they won. That's a good team. They won that game at home, but they also had to recover a bunch of their own fumbles, right? It was a little bit of a sloppy game. But I think the Miami game, you're right, is probably the most complete. That's why I sort of do think it would just calm even the locker room and how people feel. Confidence is a thing, and I think if the Eagles could win this game convincingly, they might get their mojo back. Jay, I'll ask you, what is something you're looking for today from the Eagles that's not necessarily an X's and O's related, just something big picture that you're looking for today?
I would just say that they have to figure out a way to settle and get off the field on third downs. And I think that's going to be a big telltale sign if they can fix that over the next 3 weeks and get teams off the field on third down, and also get the percentage of scoring touchdowns down in the red zone. Like, those I'm looking for. Most of them are defensively that I'm looking for. Yeah, you want the offense to do better. I think we have the personnel to do better. So that's why I'm a little bit more, and I've seen them do it this year, the offense, fire on all cylinders. We haven't seen the defense play a good game since Miami, and that may be the only good game they played all year. And so you want to see the defense kind of settle in under Patricia and see if they can take that step. So, because that will tell me where the Eagles are going to be in the postseason. That alone.
Third down, huge.
Yeah.
Greg, I want to shift gears, ask you a little bit about just the Giants, because they were left for dead. Not that they're, having any type of a season anymore, but Tommy DeVito took over. They wound up winning 3 in a row. I don't think a lot of people would have expected that, including a win over the Packers. So from a tape standpoint, while you were watching them, what jumped out at you? How they were able to win 3 games in a row after such a terrible start?
Well, I think a couple things stand out without getting into the weeds just yet. I think defensively they started to play better. They were very poor defensively for much of this season. Staying with the third down theme, they were very poor on third down. They could not get off the field at all, which was very surprising for a Wink Martindale defense, but they could not get off the field. And then the other thing was, even though they were not necessarily throwing for a lot of yards, they were not asking Tommy DeVito, and again, we'll get into more of this, to really toss the ball around the yard. He was not turning it over. So they felt that, look, sacks, I don't want to say they're okay, but then you punt. And he was getting sacked a lot. I think there's only been one game that he has started where he has not been sacked, and that was the Green Bay Monday night game, which they won. There were no sacks and no turnovers in that game. In other games, he's been sacked quite a bit, but that's still better than a turnover. And I think what they've done with him is they've pretty much said, and this would be my sense, that if you don't see it right away, it's okay to run. And he's shown a lot more than functional mobility. He's actually shown very good mobility. So the combination of not turning it over, not having, as many negative plays in their own end, and the defense playing better football has allowed them to stay in games and to win some games. Obviously, it fell apart a little last week because he was sacked 7 times, although that game was close. I mean, as you may recall, that game was 7-6 in the third quarter. So, yeah, the score made it look bad toward the end, but they were not blown out the way you think of teams getting blown out.
Right. All right. Giants hanging in there, playing it a little safe and finding a formula that has worked for them with all the injuries that they've had so far. All right. We got our injury report to get into. Of course, injury sponsored by Garage Beer. It's light beer like it used to be. Find yours at drinkgaragebeer.com. It was a very interesting week for Eagles in the injury department as we start off with wide receiver DeVonta Smith, and it didn't look good for a little bit. He did not practice until Saturday when he got limited work in, but he has been cleared to play, which is always interesting, right, Adam? We always talk about what your status is, whether you're a veteran or sometimes young players, they don't practice much, they don't play, but a player like DeVonta Smith, they felt as long as he could get out there on that last day and get some work in, that he would be able to play, and it looks like he's going to play today. He is going to play today. Yeah,
he's playing. In fact, he was telling the media in his availability on Saturday how he's like, man, if I don't like a walk, I'm playing. So it's kind of mind over matter at this point. Jason could attest to that this late in the season. And they need him. There's no question about it. He's had some really good games against the Giants. And then, the other injuries, which are interesting. This one is going to be fascinating to see if Nick Morrow, who's questionable today, he didn't practice at all during the week. As we know, most of the time, guys who don't practice don't play. But it's kind of changed now. They give the veterans a little bit of latitude. If the guy think he could play, we'll let him warm up, see how he feels, and we'll get into that later in the show about what the rotation might look like at inside linebacker based on the injuries. Now, we know that Nakobe Dean's out indefinitely. As we're told, there's no current expectation that he'll return, unfortunately. Avonte Maddox, Jeff, as you know, he got a lot of practice time in this week. In fact, he had no setbacks. He felt pretty good. So maybe he gets activated this week. We'll get into what's going on at the slot corner position. Justin Evans is out for the season. He can't come back. So they're a little bit light at safety. But the big outs this week, Landon Dickerson with a thumb surgery, Darius Slay with a knee surgery. Zach Cunningham now, this is 2 out of 3 weeks that he's missed. This is the new injury. This is the knee injury. And Jeff, as you know, the thing that people around the league had a problem with Zach Cunningham was not that he couldn't play anymore. It's about being hurt a lot. He had played through some minor stuff earlier in the season, played pretty well. But now you get concerned with age, as he's now in his late 20s, about his availability going forward.
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to get back on with DeVonta's knees, right? Because as you mentioned, being on the injury report for a little bit here, Jay, as a receiver, the big thing on DeVonta coming out of college was not talent. It was durability, Slim Reaper, right? How he's built for the NFL game. And the knees this year haven't kept him out of a game yet, but have kept him on the injury report. Do you have any concern, like durability-wise, with the knock on him coming out of college and what you've seen him being on the injury report week after week?
No, I got nothing to say about DeVonta Smith. I believe that he's probably been the most professional person on our team the last year or so, just in general, the way he goes about his business, the way that he's asked to do things that are not necessarily in his capabilities, like blocking on the edge for a screen. He doesn't complain about it. He goes out there and tries his best and does it. Maybe undersized, but he's a competitor. And so I got nothing to say about DeVonta Smith. And as far as him being durable, as long as you can show up for football games when you're that talented, that's all that really matters. And yeah, so you're going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, when he plays, he looks dynamic. So yeah,
as long as he's playing football games, you can't say anything about it.
Right. Yeah. As Adam talked about, go ahead. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something else?
No,
sorry. The whole depth at linebacker really kind of key here today to see. And with Nick Morrow, you hope that he can play and then make it through. If not, Shaq Leonard, the rookie Ben Van Sumeren, sort of next man up, and then the elevation, obviously, of Brandon Smith just leaves the Eagles a little scary there, a little thin, a little scary at linebacker. We'll have to see what happens. On the good side, the Eagles get Cam Jurgens, their right guard, back from a pectoral injury that sidelined him against Seattle. However, left guard Landon Dickerson is out. He had a minor thumb surgery, so it appears Sua Opeta, who started in Jurgens' place at right guard against Seattle, will start at left guard now in place of Dickerson. We'll talk a little bit about the offensive line against what Wink Martindale and the Giants defense does later in the show. As far as the secondary goes, Darius Slay continues to be out from the knee surgery. It leaves their secondary still thin, still reeling. We will see if Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks to continue to get increased snaps. We'll talk about what they did against Seattle and what to maybe expect today. Avonte Maddox not going to play. Now, Adam, this is sort of the opposite, right? A guy who practiced in full all week, and you thought they might be able to get him out in there, but they're going to hold him back. He's not going to be ready to play today against the Giants.
Yeah, he's been out almost 3.5 months, and it's a conditioning issue. That's the only issue. He's good to go in terms of being able to physically play. It's just a conditioning issue. But this is, how are they going to handle the slot role when he comes back? How many snaps will we be able to handle? Will they give Roby? Will they split it because it'll be his first game back going forward here? So that's something we'll have to look at. And just one thing I want to mention: an inside linebacker, Shaq Leonard's definitely starting. It's who's going to start next to him.
Right.
That's the issue. Ben Van Sumer, Jeff, we talked about this when he was signed. Now, I know they gave him a nice signing bonus. What we were told was really good athlete, put up a ton of tackles in college. The issue is processing, not overrunning plays, being in the right spot. That's why he wasn't drafted.
Greg, did you do a lot of Ben Van Sumeren at Michigan State?
I did not watch him. So
yeah, he wasn't like on a whole bunch of radar. He was a great athletic tester, as Adam mentioned, but yeah.
No, I don't think anybody, I mean, again, I know there were guys like Dane Brugler who do draft, 12 months out of the year. I don't. So I'm sure there's guys like Dane who watched him, but he was not really on anybody's list. And no one really talked about him at all until his pro day when he blew it up. That's when all of a sudden people started talking about him. But prior to that, he was not really on anybody's list. I probably did about 250 guys, and he was not one of them.
Right. Okay. There we go. We talked about him. Andrew DeCecco did write a very nice profile on Ben Van Sumeren on insidethebirds.com this week. I encourage everybody to check it out. The Eagles did elevate Tristan McCullum, who plays safety and can play corner. He is a D-back. They elevated him for some depth. Let's go to the Giants here because stop us if you guys have heard this before, but their offensive line is in shambles. They're doing a whole lot of mixing and matching there. We know they've got 2 guys. Is it 3 guys or 2 now on injured reserve? Shane Lemieux is definitely on injured reserve. Josh Izidu, and then most recently was the right tackle Evan Neal, correct?
Yeah, he just went on IR yesterday. In fact, the rule for this week's Monday games is if you had to make a roster move, they had to be done Sunday by 4 p.m. Eastern. So Evan Neal is missed. By the time we get to week 18, he'll have missed half the season. He's been a major disappointment coming out of Alabama. He struggled really early on. Quite frankly, guys, last year, I think if you talk to the Giants privately, they would probably tell you they overachieved as a football team. They didn't have very high expectations coming in year one. Now you fast forward, lots of injuries, Jeff, as you mentioned. Their offensive line has barely been together. Azudu was really a guy who was going to probably back up, be one of their top backup linemen. Lemieux could play guard or center, might have started. And then Neal's been a train wreck since they drafted him. He just has not worked out well. Justin Pugh, they got out. He wasn't really retired, but he was on his couch. You've seen the T-shirts off the couch. Jeff, as you said it very well, this has been an absolute train wreck, their offensive line. They're going to have to reevaluate it because they're not very talented. They've got a lot of backups playing, guys who shouldn't be playing, guys playing out of position. It's not just the quarterback who struggled, Daniel Jones, before he got hurt. It's the offensive line has been in shambles since week 1.
It's bad.
Yeah. Justin Pugh, I believe a Bucks County guy, local guy here in the Philadelphia area, right? Yeah, he is playing left guard for them. Now, what's the situation? Because they brought Matt Pert off of injured reserve, and he has played tackle for them in the past. So how do you see that impacting the offensive line for the Giants?
Yeah, so for him to play today, he should be active because they activated him off IR. They have to feel that he could go in there and play right tackle is what I believe would happen if he did actually start to be at right tackle. Andrew Thomas is their left tackle. Pert is a guy that a lot of high hopes for, but it's been hurt a lot. I don't know what it is with the injuries, Jeff, particularly in their offensive line. Remember last year we talked about neck and ACL injuries? They've
Yes.
had too many knee injuries with this offensive line. It's been very, very odd. But Hurt being active today, he certainly will be their backup tackle at the very least.
Somewhere I hear Trey Thomas, our friend, yelling, "Where knee braces?" as he always likes to say when he sees
knee braces.
Always big on the knee braces. Yeah. All right. Well, unless you're living in a cave, you already know the Giants offense is operating behind third string quarterback Tommy DeVito, a North Jersey kid who went to Syracuse. He was undrafted. He is playing for the Giants right now because Daniel Jones has been out with an ACL injury. And then his backup, Tyrod Taylor, had missed some time and was briefly hospitalized with a rib injury. That's what initially forced DeVito into the position. Now, Taylor is back and as the backup, but they are going forward with the New Jersey kid, and he's making a lot of headlines at pizzerias all across the northern part of the state. So good for him, capitalizing on his sudden fame. So great for Tommy DeVito. No relation to Danny, as I'm told, but it doesn't matter because he's a DeVito from North Jersey, so it works. On defense, the Giants are without run-stopping defensive tackle Raheem Nunez-Roches. They call him Nacho. They are going to be out without him from a knee injury. Now, questionable. Now, this is big, guys, and Greg, I'll go to you on this. Questionable to play today are Dexter Lawrence and A'Shawn Robinson. The vibes seem to think that they're going to give it a go. I don't know if it's jumped out to you on tape that Lawrence is dealing with a hamstring injury or not, but A'Shawn Robinson has played well this year. This is kind of a big part of their defensive interior, is it not?
Without question. I mean, we know what Lawrence is, so we can leave him alone. He's just a great player. A'Shawn Robinson's been a really solid player in this league, and actually last week he was a beast in the run game against the Saints. I mean, he really showed up on film. So he's a really good run stuffer, run defender. You know, he's not necessarily a great pass rusher by any means, but he's a very strong interior player, and he can defend the run and he can eat up space. And Lawrence, of course, you know, he can be dominant. He can be dominant as a 0 technique, a 1 technique, even a 3 technique at times, depending how they want to align their fronts. So, you know, again, I don't know the extent of the injury. I don't know if it's the kind of injury that would, even if he is active, if it would limit his snaps or limit his ability to play at his highest level. But he can, even against really good O-linemen, he can wreck them. He's that good a player.
Yeah. So we'll see how, if they play and if they do, how impactful they can be as they're both nursing injuries. Now, we'll finish this off with this. Giants general manager Joe Schoen has absolutely earned his paycheck this week because the man's kicker was on injured reserve. And then the kicker who was replacing Graham Gano, Randy Bullock, kicked last week and hurt himself and went on injured reserve. And so their practice squad kicker, who was going to be activated and play today, Cade York, got hurt in practice because now he's on the practice squad IR. So Joe Schoen says he probably looks at the roll. He's crossing everything. Mason Crosby, he used to kick in this league, right? Well, let's bring him in. So Mason Crosby, the former Packers kicker who probably turned 63 last week, is now going to be kicking for the New York Giants today. Adam, have you ever seen anything like this?
No. Well, here's the thing now. Watch kickoffs today because he stopped kicking off. They used their punter, I think, in Green Bay. So he is 39, which he turned this season. Look, it's just I don't know what Ronnie Barnes is their head athletic trainer. He's been
around.
Best.
That guy's been around for 100 years, Adam.
Ever. I mean, Greg, I think I got to think. I'd have to look it up.
I think he was helping Y.A. Till off the field.
I got to think at least 30 years. But they've had the worst injury situation, and Jeff, you mentioned their winning streak. Just with the train wreck that the team has been with the injuries, I give these guys credit.
Yeah,
it's very well coached. It's just a roster that's completely beat up.
Yeah, I know, up in New York area, the whole idea of whether or not Daboll and his staff were actually competent had started to come under question. They felt like he overachieved last year, and they were wondering if this guy could really coach. And I think, again, they're not going to make the playoffs. It's not a good year. They got a lot of work to do. But I do think, as you just mentioned, and we've talked about a little bit, the Giants have not just laid down and let everybody just slug them to death after a really tough start. They have battled back. They've fought. They've scratched. They've clawed. And so I think that, if anything, maybe the Giant fan up there may have a little bit more confidence that going forward, if they fix some of their major holes personnel-wise, that they can be competitive again.
And you know what, Jeff, I don't think a lot of people realize how hard it is to play in this league without an offensive line. I mean, this is a really bad offensive line. Andrew Thomas is a really good player, and obviously they leave him one-on-one a lot, as they should. But the rest of their offensive line, I mean, you mentioned Pear, coming back today. Phillips has been playing right tackle, and he's not a tackle.
Right.
He's probably a backup guard, and he deserves to be in the league, no question. He's been with a number of teams. He's filled in. He's one of those guys that might play 10, 11 years and have a really nice NFL career as a journeyman backup. But he's been starting, I think, 5 of the last 6 games at right tackle, and he is not a tackle. And it really limits what they can do in their pass game because they have to help him. And then, you mentioned some of the interior players. Even the rookie center has really struggled this year quite a bit. So, their O-line, it's just, like I said, I'm not sure people realize how hard it is to play offense when your O-line is, it's probably one of the 3 or 4 worst in the league.
Oof, that is brutal.
You don't usually go that far, Greg. So
it's all the truth.
Well, but Jay,
no,
you've been watching the tape.
I love that he said it.
But don't you think the tape tells you that?
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't disagree with you. I just like that you said it.
It is rare because you always I stay away from rankings, but you had no problem calling them one of the.
Well, it's a bad group. Tennessee's a bad group. Carolina's not a really good group. The Giants are kind of right there. It's really hard to play. It just really is. The reason I'm mentioning it is I don't know Brian Daboll. I've never met him, okay? Right. But I'm a coach guy, okay? Just my career, I've been very fortunate to be around coaches who've taught me the game, some of the great coaches in this league over time. And so I'm a coach guy. And it's so easy when a team is not playing well to rip the coaches. That's easy. That always just strikes me the wrong way because I know what I do and I know how hard I work watching tape. And these guys do more than I do, and they've got staffs of 20. I have me. Okay, so I know what these guys do, and I just, and I'm sure Jay can jump in here. He's played, he's been, he's coached, he's been around all this. You're dealing with guys that work and work and work, and it's just too easy to say, oh, he's a bad coach. That comes from nowhere.
Yeah, no, I believe that Brian Daboll is a good coach. I just don't. The only thing that I would question Brian Daboll on is if he's signed off on Daniel Jones. That's the only thing I'll ever say, just because I think that Daniel Jones signing, I believe that's going to be a bigger tale in the future.
And it might be. It could be.
Than anything. But currently, as constructed, they definitely can't do much. They do have some younger players that are very exciting, but you can't get the ball to them if you can't block.
No doubt about it. All right, coaching is going to be a big topic that we're going to discuss going forward here. All the Eagles want for Christmas, not 2 front teeth, but to get their functional offense back. They have been held under 20 points in each of their 3 straight losses, and they've been outscored 95-49 in that span. That is the 8th fewest points in the NFL for teams that have played 3 games in the last 3 weeks. So today they face a Giants defense that's allowed 28 or more points 6 times this season. Jason, there's a lot of discussion right now going on about what is plaguing this Eagles offense more, Jalen Hurts or the play calling. Some want to say Hurts has regressed. Others want to say the poor play is due to play calling. I thought you did a great job on Q&A podcast with Quentin Michael last week, explaining how this is one of those situations that people struggle with where both things can be true at the same time. You certainly seem, though, to lean the way with the film study and everything and what you were showing toward there being some real issues with Hurts seeing the field correctly and seeing wide open players. So people can talk about play calling, but you showed that there were plays where guys were open and Jalen, for whatever reason, wasn't getting the ball there.
Yeah, pretty easy concepts too. It wasn't hard. It was cover 3 defense majority of the time. And so those concepts are very, very easy to see. Pre-snap, they were able to see when they went in motion. To kind of make sure that it was, not man and or, zone. But this game in particular, I won't speak to every other game. This game in particular, Jalen Hurts was the main culprit.
Right.
I would say probably the biggest part of it. I thought there was a lot of plays left on the field. Jalen was missing Hank. Hank concept is from legendary chief coach Hank Stram, who always ran this play, which was a curl flat concept. Very simple. It's been in the National Football League for decades.
Forever.
Right? For decades. And it's basically designed for cover 3 to get the flat defender out of your viewpoint, and therefore you're dealing with the third corner that doesn't want to get beat over the top. He missed that play, I want to say 3 times he missed it. And one in a critical situation, one of them almost got Dallas Goedert hurt. Devontae Smith was wide open. So there are some things that Jalen Hurts is doing wrong. That's one thing, reading the coverage. The other thing, too, is that teams are rushing him inside and he's getting antsy in the pocket. There's times, which I showed everyone on tape, on the Q&A show, that the pocket is clean. He had enough time to step up, had enough time to make a decision, had enough time to get to the right guy and figure it out. But he left the pocket too early, or he threw the ball late off his back foot, or something like that. So, so you guys know the last play, I don't completely put on Jalen Hurts. The interception of A.J. Brown was an awful route. He had a circus pump. A circus pump is inside breaker, then he breaks out toward the sideline at about 16 to 18 yards, and then you pump up the field. There was no clear indication that he was breaking out. He kind of bled it up the field, which caused him to outrun Jalen Hurts' arm. Devontae Smith at the top screen killed his guy. Jalen has to do a better job of looking off the safety, but I believe it would have been a better chance if AJ would have ran the right route. But other than that, I think it was even the one with Quez, the interception with Quez. Quez, one-on-one situation, every quarterback's going to throw that ball. The thing as a receiver, you can't freaking let the guy outmuscle you the ball at anything that hits the ground. But ultimately, Jalen Hurts is the biggest culprit.
Greg,
now.
Yeah, to get right on this game. We're just talking about this Seattle game because, Greg, you had made an interesting point last week, both on your show with Clay Harbor, Inside the Tape, and on this pregame show, that when quarterbacks are struggling, sometimes what you see is coaches design plays to just get them in a rhythm, get the ball out early, maybe take a deviation from what they normally do. And you saw the Eagles come out with a 15-play drive pretty early. In fact, they had 3 long drives. It almost seemed like
they had 3 drives.
The offense
12 plays.
Right. Yeah. So for people who are saying there's no, they did. And it looked like their plan was to try to get Jalen in a better rhythm by getting the ball out quicker early. And it's just a bizarre scenario where it worked and then it stopped working,
Well, I mean, I think that at this point, there's such an inconsistency to what he's seeing and what he's processing. I agree 1,000% with Jay. I mean, first of all, I'd love to know what fans mean when they say it's the play calling. I'd love to hear them explain that, number one. Which I'm not sure they could, other than the fact that the offense was great last year and they don't see it being great this year. So it must be the play calling. But number two, they are calling basic things. Jay just spoke to a concept that many teams start games with, whether you want to call it curl flat or snag flat. It's basic stuff, okay? That, to get quarterbacks in rhythm, just so they can complete passes, feel good. You're not looking for big plays. You're just looking for the quarterback to get completions. Hey, now we're into our flow. Now we run our offense. He's missing basic reads, and Jay just addressed that, but it needs to be said again. It's just basic stuff that they're trying to get him to feel comfortable and to get back into it. And it's not happening because he's missing all these. I mean, to me, the one play that really kind of is very, very representative of where he is was 3rd and 7 with over 2 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter in the previous game against Seattle. Okay, and they're still right in this game at that point. This was before the interception. And he's in an empty set. He drops back. He has a throw to each side of the formation, whichever side he chooses. I don't know how it's coached, so I don't know what they tell him. But he had Smith on the slant to his right, and he had a high-low concept to the field to his left, with Brown breaking wide open on the dig. He never even planted his back foot. He just immediately dropped back and ran out of the pocket to his right. He never even planted. And then he just threw it away, and it was 3rd and 7. This is the NFL. We're playing quarterback here in the NFL. You know,
Yeah.
the thing is,
Right.
we've seen him do these things. That's the thing that's got to be so frustrating, you know, for us, for fans, and for the coaching staff. Okay, because we've seen him do these things. I can't tell you why he's not, but he's not. And until he does, the offense will be up and down. Now, that doesn't mean he can't make a big play. We know he can make a big play, and maybe today will be the day he makes 3 big plays running out of the pocket and they win 34-10, and then everybody will go home happy. But, you know, he needs to just execute basic concepts, which he's not executing.
I want to add this point to Greg really fast. I think that teams are figuring out that if you get bodies in front of him, he can't see. That's what I'm looking at the tape, and when I look back over it, there's times where we're looking at it, and we're looking at it from the coach's angle, from coach's tape. So we're looking at it like dudes are wide open in front of you, but maybe from his perspective, it's sort of like Drew Brees. If he's not back far enough and there's no clear lane, it's hard for him to see. And that's what I think is happening, especially when the routes are over the middle and there's bodies in that section.
I'm just going to add this. Geoff and I spoke to a very strong league source who watched the Eagles tape last week and said they clearly are coaching to the limitations of the quarterback. They're not pushing the ball downfield nearly enough. Obviously, it's completely different from last year. They're kind of hamstrung. I think this is kind of what we're all saying. They're trying to get him out of this. And so I throw this back to you, Jason. What could they do to get him back in rhythm? What can you do? You play with quarterbacks when they're struggling. What can you do to help him?
I don't necessarily know in this situation. Like, you, as a coach, your job is to go over it, and I'm pretty sure. I have a suggestion, but this is what coaches do. They show you your mistakes, how you could have made them better. They give you similar looks in practice based on the team that they're facing. But remember, coaches are under scrutiny as well within the organization, not necessarily with the media. So it's incumbent upon the coach to make sure that the team look adequate and prepared for a game. So what does that lend to? So I don't have Howie on my back or the head coach on my back. I'm going to script the plays so my guys are getting advantageous looks, so we look like a well-oiled machine, rather than giving guys things that will challenge them. So I think that the only thing that you can do as a coach is to go to the general manager and or the head coach and say, hey, listen, practice won't look smooth this week, but this is a rhyme and a reason. I'm trying to get Jalen to see it. And I feel like if we baby him and give him the throw with the easy read, it won't be a game time situation. And so I think that if they can get on the same page as far as coaches, and this is a hypothetical, I don't necessarily know what they're doing. This has just been my experience from all the years that I played. That you get on the same court with the management and also the head coach and say, hey, listen, we got to throw harder looks at him in practice so he can get more of a game time feel.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, let me ask you this, Jay. When quarterbacks, and just, you're not that you're a quarterback, but you've played with many, so I'm sure you've seen them at times either go through a period where maybe they didn't have their best confidence, or maybe they were pressing. Perhaps that's what's going on with Jalen Hurts. Do they tend to, during those times, just target their best playmakers because they're trying so hard to make sure they make a play? Well, even if it's a risky throw, you're saying that's my guy. I got to throw it to him because he makes plays.
I just think that you're going to do what your baseline is, right? You always sink back to your baseline when you're unsure. What's Jalen Hurts' saving grace? Is his athleticism? His saving grace is, and every quarterback's saving grace is, if I can't figure it out, I know when I have a one-on-one, I'm just going to give that guy a chance. I think that's his baseline. I don't, and so there's some truth to what you're saying, but I just think that's similar with every quarterback. If I get a one-on-one with a guy that I like, or it doesn't even have to be a guy that I like, but I can clearly see that, I'm going to go there because it's less thinking for me and it's an easier situation.
Well, I asked because I was just looking at the target share over the last 3 weeks, and it's pretty glaring how A.J. Brown obviously he's always going to be a top target, but this is the last 3 games, 3 losses. A.J. Brown, 36% of the target share, Devontae Smith, 26% of the target share. So that's, 62% right there of all of his targets are obviously going to those two guys. I went back and did the math last year. It's a little bit higher than all of last year. It did seem like the third receiver was a little bit bigger part of the offense. Obviously, Goddard missed a game, so he's only at 13%, but Jack Stoll had 0 targets. So even if you combined when Goddard was out with Jack Stoll's targets, it's still going to be 13%. Then you see DeAndre Swift 9%, Kenneth Gainwell 7%. I mean, Julio Jones 1%, Zacchaeus 1%. So Watkins 5%.
This is what you're going to get when a guy like Greg said, when a guy isn't seeing it, he's going to go off of first and second read. Usually, you know why guys used to love playing for Aaron Rodgers? Because freaking James Jones, who was the third or fourth receiver, could have a 100-yard game like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Because he can get to you. And that's what happens when you are a quarterback that sees a lot and can get you the ball. You can be a guy that ends up being a fourth receiver, that end up being a player of a game one day, because the defense dictated that he reads you and you guys were on the same page that day. And that's what you want. When a quarterback isn't seeing a bunch, you're going to get the same guys. Right. That's just this. He's just not saying it.
And Jeff, keep in mind that the Eagles are trying to do this because through 3 quarters last week, Hurts had the quickest from snap to delivery that he's ever had in his career. They're trying to get him with quick rhythm, one read, no read throws. That's the thing. They're doing this.
Are you saying they're coaching, Greg? They're actually coaching. They're.
I know fans might struggle with this point, but they're trying to do this, and he's just not executing it.
Yeah, and I said a couple of weeks ago, I was perturbed with some of the way the offense is run, where there's 1 or 2 receivers. 1 or 2 receivers out for a route, and what Greg said makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make sense to me, but it makes a lot of sense. And what Adam said, if people around the league think that they have to play to the level of the quarterback, they're going to give him less.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting today, right, when we talk about this defensive structure that the Giants run, exactly what they'll let Jalen Hurts do. We'll talk about that in a second. First, I want to direct everybody to our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. So the Giants defense, it's always an adventure when you're facing their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale. And I'm sure Wink, just like us, has watched the tape this past week, and he might have a little twinkle in his eye Christmas time around, because we know he likes to blitz, and we also know he's very good at breaking down offensive line protection schemes. He's one of the best at getting free rushers at the quarterback. Greg, let's go back to last year, even though that doesn't apply to this year, just philosophically. Last year, in the first time these teams played, the Eagles won 48-22. They had one big play after another. And if I recall correctly, Wink was doing Wink things and trying to blitz a lot and doing what he does. Now, the rematch, it was a lot closer. The Eagles won 22-16. They were struggling a little bit on offense at that time. Jalen was still dealing with, I believe, the shoulder collarbone injury. And if I remember correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Giants blitzed less in that game. They may have showed it a lot, but they were a little bit more zone oriented. But here you have a situation, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because last year it began around week 12 when Wink Martindale sort of changed up his defense, because number one, he didn't have corners that could really play man the way he wants to, and he just was kind of getting burned. So he changed up his defense. As I said, I think it was around week 12 where they decided to blitz less and play more zone, and it fit the personnel that he had. That's one reason this year that in the draft they drafted Deonte Banks, because at his core he'd like to play more man coverage. Now, one of the things that he's doing a lot of, and it's going to be very interesting today, is, and you're seeing this throughout the league, is he's doing a lot more of disguise and late rotation, particularly on third down, to get to both multiple pressure concepts and different zone coverage concepts. Simmons is a big part of that. Isaiah Simmons, this is sort of the role that they've found for him. He really only plays on third down, and he's used in multiple ways within that context. But it's a lot more late rotation as opposed to, hey, let's just line up and play man coverage, which we all remember from his days when he was with the Ravens, when it seemed like he did that all the time. So he's not a pure zone guy, a pure man guy the way he used to be. Now he will play man. There have been games this year where Banks has traveled with the number one receiver. It'll be interesting to see if he will do that with A.J. Brown today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Jay, based on what you said, right, about how you're seeing teams play defense against the Eagles lately, pressuring up the middle, trying to get Jalen on the run. I almost think that this will be another Wink Martindale pressure-a-thon as opposed to just kind of trying to scale back here.
Well, you gotta remember that the Eagles caught Wink, I want to say, a good 3 or 4 times in zero pressure last year. Quez on an out route. Matter of fact, Julian Love missed time to interception, and he got 2 last week. It was crazy. I remember that game like it was Devontae Smith, that big catch of Devontae Smith.
Oh, you're talking about that slot fade when he should have.
Yeah, he should have intercepted it.
I know.
He got his revenge.
That's right.
That's right. I remember that play. That was a touchdown to Devontae. Yeah,
it was also blitz, right? So in those situations, so he has to be very careful because the Eagles in zero blitz can design that quarterback run, which can be just as effective as an inside breaking slant on a pass play. We got Buffalo with it, we got the Chiefs with it. So in zero. So we'll see how it turns out.
Well, so I mean, do you feel like this is a bad time for the Eagles to sort of be seeing this kind of defense? They haven't seen a defense that comes after like this in a while, the way Jalen's playing, or does it present some opportunities that might help you get out of the rut?
The only way that like Greg said, is that he's a man at heart. And when you're a heavy blitz team, that means you have to go man. And I think you probably will be bailing the Eagles out if you win a large portion of man.
Yeah. See, I think that he can still blitz and play zone match concepts behind it.
Yeah, that would make more. That would make.
I think you'll see him do more of that. But there's no question he'll look to break down the protections. Look, obviously with Dickerson out and Opeta, I mean, I know he's played, but now he's playing left guard instead of right guard. Jurgens is still an inexperienced player who has not played as many snaps this year as I'm sure they would have liked because he's missed 5 games. So, he's going to make them have to think through that as well.
Jason, on communication with offensive linemen, do you worry about this going against Martindale? Because you got 2 inexperienced. Greg just talked about Jurgens. Now you got Opeta. Yes, he's shown now he could play both sides, and Tyler Steen barely played. Do you worry about that today with the blitz?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a concern. The guy that's in the middle of them, though, is Jason Kelce. He's a great communicator. So if it was a different position, I would be more worried. But I think that they can pick that up. And also, those positions are naturally used to getting help, no matter what the circumstance is. So could it be some trouble? Yeah. I think this defense coordinator always presents trouble, but I think Jason Kelce can kind of steady the ship in this situation. And also, I believe in Jeff Stout. That if there's one person I do believe in on the Eagles staff, no matter what coaching, offensive, defense, I believe in Jeff Stout.
All right. Well, one thing that Jeff Stoutland and the Eagles will have to be conscious of today is that the Giants are blitzing at a 42% clip. That is second to the Minnesota Vikings behind with Brian Flores leading their defense now. And the 42% that the Giants are blitzing at is actually higher than last year when they led the NFL at 39.7%. So whether or not they come after him or just show it, you know that there's going to be a lot of guys causing confusion up front for the Philadelphia Eagles offense. Adam, I wanted to go back to something Greg said with you and just sort of get your understanding of the situation when the Giants decided to trade for Isaiah Simmons. It was really more the Cardinals deciding to unload yet another linebacker that they could not figure out how to use, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
yeah, in fact,
there was more to it than that, Jeff. But we'll leave that alone.
Yeah, Jonathan Gannon was not a fan of Simmons. It wasn't working. So they got what they could, which is a bag of peanuts, to be honest with you. They just didn't get a lot. But, it's interesting. Last year when the Eagles blew out the Giants on the Giants' home field, yeah, they scored 48 points. It wasn't like Hurts put up like 500 yards. He only put up just over 200. It was just a series of plays. The protection was mostly pretty good, but it was either in the run game or defensively, the Eagles had their day that day. But they're going to be, look, there are always opportunities to get blitz. We'll wait what Wink wants to do. I don't know if he's got the back end to do it, but the Eagles have shown that they can protect it. It's can they get the ball out of Hurts' hands? And Jason, I would throw this back to you on that. Because fans have asked us this, and it's hard for us to answer it, and Greg could also chime in if he wants, but with hot routes or the ability to get it out when the blitz is coming, do you see those things built in? Because people keep asking us that.
You don't want to play a game of hot routes.
If they're not protecting well, he's got to get rid of the football or run,
Yeah. So when he's seeing it, and when last year, like, I don't understand, like, I don't know what it is, but you can clearly see that they had plays that he had an ability to check in and out of. You don't see that much this year. That's what you need. You need two plays, and you can run A or B. And with a team that blitzes a lot, that's what the offense coordinator would do. Offense coordinator would come up to the line and say, "Hey, we have two plays," and the answer is just kill. It is not a whole readjustment, moving people around. It's just kill. And now second play is live. That's how it should go. But what this offense coordinator is going to do is try to build in a hot route so he doesn't have to have Jalen Hurts to think. But again, with a defense coordinator that blitzes 40% of the time, you don't want to get caught up into letting him recognize that you're going to adjust every time he blitz. So it has to be built in.
I couldn't agree more. That's 1,000% correct.
Yeah,
Jay knows that probably better than I do, but you don't want to get stuck having to make adjustments. You want to have that built into your route concepts and the quarterback's read, so that he does. So the receivers don't have to make an adjustment, and the quarterback doesn't have to make an adjustment. Because if two guys have to do that, you're just setting yourself up for problems.
Yeah, and like I said this last week, is that the offense needs structure when it comes to play calling in this manner. It's the only way that I've seen it work, and I think every good team has always had structure in their play calling, where one side of the field is this, the other side of the field is that, and it eliminates a lot of room for error for you. You can design a play that's successful on the right and have another successful play on the left, based on a different coverage, right? And that they're basically two plays within one, but it's just based on what the team is playing, right? And so I think the Eagles need more of that. Yeah.
Hey, Jeff, can I ask Jay a question here? So, Jay, how did Andy handle blitz, in terms of concepts and routes and the quarterback's responsibility? What was his approach in how we taught the quarterbacks?
The way he taught the quarterbacks, well, let's view it in a couple different ways, right? So Andy would always it would be a game plan and a play based on who he was playing against, who the defensive coordinator was, right? And their tendencies. He had first down, second down calls, right? And then he always had an adjustment to those calls, right? Or if he didn't have an adjustment to it, he had a left and right read.
Got it.
Okay, he had a left and right read. He had a zero tag, like, so for a guy like Wink Martindale, he would have a zero tag. It was on the play. It was double right, double Okie, kill, all Omaha. And all Omaha kill was just for the inside routes to break out and cover zero. Right. And it was based on that. And the way you coach your guy, and this was the most important, is all about the quarterback and what the quarterback has the ability to do. And the coach's job is to say, hey, listen, this is where I want your eyes to be in cover 0. This is where I want your eyes to be in cover 3. This is what I'm thinking. And the quarterback had the say-so in those routes. I already knew, because I was always an inside guy, that, hey, if it's cover 0, I'm getting the ball. I know it. Because that's the way that it was told to the quarterback in our meetings.
So much data to process with so many different variables.
I know, it's funny you say that, because I've been doing this a long time and I've been around a lot of coaches, but I'm always blown away by how much information quarterbacks need to have and how quickly in a game that they have to process that. I mean, you take a snap. We talk about late rotation. You take a snap, you have a second to kind of see what's happening. It's not. Right. I mean, I sit here with my trusty clicker and can watch the play 10 times. You take.
I've seen it.
You got to see it like that. It's really remarkable. I mean, that's why it's the hardest position to play in any sport.
It definitely is the hardest position. Here's the thing, though: the more you know, the better you are. Because remember, the front end and the back end have to be in unison. So the safeties can tell a story, but the front can't, right? So, and vice versa. It's hard to. So if you can get an indicator with the front, you can get an indicator with the second level. There's all indicators.
Yep.
You've got to be able to inoculate it.
And that's why one phrase I've heard over and over from a lot of offensive coaches is functional knowledge. Because you, as a quarterback, you can't be watching 7 guys on defense. That's not humanly possible.
Yeah.
So, so you just have to, you have to, and that's where it comes down to how it's taught. Because there's coaches teach it differently, and sometimes coaches ask quarterbacks to do things that are really, really hard to do. And for young quarterbacks, it kills them because it's just, oh my God, I got to read this, but then I got to read this, and then I got to read this. They can't do that.
Can't do it all.
Yeah.
And same way for me. If I come up to the line of scrimmage and I see no defender over me, but I see a big space for a defender, I don't care what they're doing in the backfield. There has to be a person that's covering the C gap, and there's nobody there. So I know he's coming to that position at some point. And the quarterback has to figure that out too as well.
Yeah. So the one thing, Geoff, I was going to add is John T. Filippo told us, a former Eagles quarterbacks coach, is that he would have a sort of like a cheat sheet for the quarterbacks, particularly the starter on Friday, because Friday's their last day of practice, when you play on Sunday. He did that on what Jason's talking about and Greg's talking about, because there's so much information. They wanted to boil it down to certain things. And John might have gotten that from the late, great Greg Knapp, who was a mentor of John's, because he said that there's so much because each game plan is different depending on the opponent. They didn't want to oversaturate the guy, so they gave him a cheat sheet, but they'd also quiz him. You actually have a little bit of a test for the quarterbacks on Friday.
Yeah, and that's funny. That's why I started laughing right there, is because it just reminds you, some coaches make you take tests before the game.
Yeah.
You better get them all right.
Yeah.
I just say it to me.
I was going to say, I think that's why it's important to get feedback from your quarterback, no matter how much, whether he's experienced or not, because if he's not comfortable with something, or if he feels he can't execute it, and you want honesty, obviously, if he feels he can't execute it, then you don't really want, if it's 3rd and 7, you don't want to call something he's not real comfortable with.
Right. It is. It's amazing. I mean, I think I struggle at times to help my daughter with like elementary school math, right? I don't remember what the associative property of distribution is, but
Geoff, I've been through all this. Wait till you get to trigonometry and all that stuff,
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That's not my alley. Oh boy. All right. We still got a little bit more to cover with this Eagles offense in a second. I want to remind everybody, Santa baby, the season for a fresh cut, it's here today, right? With the sponsors of today's show, Manscaped. They are the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, and they just launched their 5th generation lawnmower to help you avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Take care of your special snowflake and watch your South Pole shine like never before. You got to get the best stocking stuffer of all by going to manscaped.com. That's right. It's still available, even though today's Christmas. Use the promo code ITB20. You get 20% off and free shipping. Mrs. Claus will thank you. Everybody knows the Lawn Mower 5.0 is the crown jewel of the holidays. Its skin-safe technology is a lifesaver and known for reducing nicks and cuts on the Santa sack. Don't forget the Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit and the Handyman Electric Face Shaver to cover all your facial hair needs. You got to get rid of those nasty icicles from the nose and ears with the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer. And take care of your chestnuts with Manscaped's Boxers 2.0. And there is even the Shears 3.0 nail grooming kit. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code ITB20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the promo code ITB20, ITB20. Say ho, ho, ho to a well-grown mistletoe with Manscaped. All right, finishing off this Eagles offense and what can get it back on track. Yeah, we just go right on to the next one, right? One thing that sort of stood out, I believe, in the Seattle's loss, the inconsistency of the Eagles' run game. They had a 17-13 lead in the fourth quarter, even after the Seahawks field goal with 10 minutes to play. And after that point, when they ran the ball with a running back, they had a 3-yard gain, a 5-yard gain. Then there was an 11-yard gain, but then it was 3 and then 0. So that's 23 yards on 5 carries. That's okay, but it's not how we've seen the Eagles run the ball in the past, especially when they want to pound the ball, take time off the clock, and get a little explosion out of that run game in the process. So, Jason, I ask you, is it time to brush the cobwebs off Mr. Rashad Penny and play him? Or is it time to just get somebody else in who can? You'll note that Trey Sermon actually had a decent, that was it last week or the week before, where he had over 80 yards rushing, right? Yep. It was the week before. I don't know if he played it all yesterday. But what gives here? This running game just isn't what it's been in the past with explosive runs. Is it time to do something about that?
I don't. First of all, we're not going to see Rashad Penny. I know
we're not. Then why is he on the team?
That's what everyone asks.
We're not. If you can't give that guy a shot to play against his old team, he's never playing. You know, so unless there is like some like catastrophic injuries that are happening to take place in running back. So, I don't necessarily know if it's a player, a running back thing. I just think that there has to be a level of commitment. And I don't know what it is. I don't believe that the offensive line is blocking the same way as they did last year. Greg,
I couldn't agree more.
I just don't think that I think they're known to be the most dominant offensive line, but I don't think that you can absolutely say that this year on tape.
Yeah. You know, I think we've talked about that a lot. Like each week we make that observation, and it holds true. They really have not had, maybe since like that Minnesota game, this just dominant rushing attack where they did what they want to do.
And I've said this too, is that I like DeAndre Swift. I like him a lot. I think sometimes he plays running back at times like a receiver. He gets underneath tackles a bunch. It's not contact that you would think would bring him down sometimes. And it's okay. It's okay. Like, he's going to play a long time playing like this. So let's get that straight. But I don't see him as a guy that's going to move the pile and come out of the other side. I just don't see that from him.
Adam, let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, when you talk to coaches, you know, or people in the league about DeAndre Swift, you know, and I liked Swift coming out of college. I didn't view him as a foundation back. You know, I viewed him as, you know, just a notch below. Like, to me, he's like he's similar, but not as good as Jahmyr Gibbs. He's that kind of back.
Bring that up.
You know, he's not like a 20 carry a back game. You know, like, he's not the foundation of your run game. You know, so I mean, the Eagles obviously have not been playing that way anyway, in the way that they've deployed him. But I don't see him that way. I think he's got really good traits, and we've talked about how we'd like to see him used more in the pass game. But he's not a 20 carry a back guy to me anyway.
No, there was a point in the season where he was averaging over 17 touches per game. No, the Lions, look, we know they gave up on it. It's funny you mention Gibbs. The thing that has surprised the Lions is that he's a little bit more physical than they anticipated, because he didn't really show this at Alabama. But he's showing that, and he's sort of an upright runner, but unbelievably explosive. Now, Swift has always been seen as sort of more of a complementary back.
Yeah.
Be part of a two-man backfield. But that's the thing is Gainwell. See, we didn't mention Gainwell. Is he really that guy? Because Greg, you were the first person to put us on the radar with him about how they used him at Memphis.
Yep.
We had his head coach Ryan Silverfield on one of our shows a couple years ago, and he didn't see the way that the Eagles were using him. They didn't use him that way. I just find it's interesting that this staff, who loved him for that draft, as we first mentioned after he was drafted, that this staff really wanted him. I don't necessarily see him, Geoff, throwing it back to you, as this kind of, not a lead back, but a guy, okay, you're going to grind carries with. That's not really what, and he's not really explosive based on the way that they use him.
I think they're Gainwell or Swift.
Gainwell. He's not. He's not this explosive guy that we thought we were getting, Geoff. So I think this is something for the offseason. These coaches have to kind of figure it out. And by the way, Swift's contract is up, so he may not even be back.
I don't think that Gainwell, I think Gainwell is explosive. I just think that, remember, players get a bad rap from this perspective. Just because a coach tells this guy, hey, I need you to do this in order to make the team better, doesn't mean that that's his optimal use.
Right.
Okay. So just because we're seeing Gainwell used in this capacity doesn't mean that he's not a good pass catcher, doesn't mean that he can't be effective in other aspects of the game. It just means that our coaching staff isn't deploying everyone in their optimal ability. Like DeAndre Swift is a great pass catcher and can be used and to do some things that will create a lot of mismatches where you don't have to be relying upon A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith to have a big game in order to win, because the running back can alleviate some of that pressure. Have we seen that? We haven't seen that at all. But that doesn't mean that he can't. It's just that the offensive staff haven't figured out ways to use guys in different positions. Same way with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on reverses. I think that would alleviate some pressure from the run game. We see other teams running a bunch. Our guys don't run a bunch of it. Misdirection. We like to run the ball at you, but it's not much misdirection. I think guys are crashing and it's harder. Go ahead, Greg.
It's funny you say that because, obviously, as these guys know, and you probably know it too, I do a ton of college work after the season. So I did Gainwell when he came out. And he didn't play the COVID year. But in 2019, if I showed you tape of Gainwell and you didn't know who he was, okay, just said, watch this guy, you'd say, wow, this guy's a wide receiver. Because first of all, he lined up split a lot. Okay, now he did gain 1,400 yards rushing, but he lined up split a lot, and he ran wide receiver routes, Jay. He didn't just run, slants or, he ran vertical routes, and he caught the ball down the field. And, obviously, as you said, you might be talking about Swift, but Gainwell did that in college. And, and he's obviously not used that way. And, I'm sure there's reasons for it. They could probably explain it. They're not going to, but they could probably explain it. But that's what he did in college.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing in a division where you have Dallas. And Dallas has Stephon Gilmore that can kind of mitigate A.J. Brown. And you have Deron Bland that you're kind of, situationally you have to be aware of because he's a ball hawk in certain times, right? So you have these matchups. You have the 49ers, that's a physical imposing team. But you can play a game through other guys when you're that talented, right? You have a guy like Gainwell, they can get you yards. Why not align him out and make Fred Warner and Kazir White. What's the other guy's name? Greenlaw. Yeah, get Greenlaw, the guy suspended. Greenlaw out there, make them show their cover skills. Like, there's so many different ways to skin a cat offensively. I just think this is what I think. I think that we have players, coaches, and I believe that the players have so much say. Especially the money guys have so much of a say that the coaches can be limited by making everyone happy.
Interesting. Well, I'd be remiss if I did not bring out one guy today who may, get the ball a little bit more than he ordinarily does, and that would be in the running game or maybe even the passing game will be Boston Scott, because he is, after all, a giant slayer. The numbers do not lie. All right, he's got 9 total games against the Giants and at least 1 touchdown in each of the 9 games. That means 11 of his 17 career touchdowns have come against the Giants. That's just 65%, if anybody's counting. And I had to use a calculator, by the way, based on our last conversation to figure that one out. So he scores a touchdown once every 10 touches against the Giants. So maybe today, Adam, any good any good info? Betty, if someone wants to put a little money down on this, right?
Well, it's funny because the odds makers, they're clued into this. So it opened as plus 1,000. Scott was to score a touchdown this week. Everyone hit it. So it's now on a plus 300 to plus 350 because everyone knows that. And it's funny. See, I remember joking a couple of years ago, once the street maybe hit 5 or 6 games, and we said Sirianni, we'll see what he does. He laughed at it after he scored one. So then the media kept asking him. He goes, I'm aware what's going on. I know he's scored. He's done very well against the Giants. And wouldn't you know it, remember, out of the blue, he didn't do anything but put him in a goal line situation. This was before the brotherly shove. So that's going to be an interesting part, Geoff. If you're gambling, if you're taking Scott here to score a touchdown at any time, what happens when they're at the 3? Is it the shove or is it the Scott handoff? We'll see.
Oh, does he become a decoy because everybody knows he scores against the Giants?
They know why he's in there. That's a great point. Right.
we gotta move on, get to the Eagles defense. Before we do that, we're gonna pause for a minute to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars and the voice of the Eagles, Mr. Merrill Reese.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, hour 2 of Inside the Birds pregame live. Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan, joined as always by former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant and Greg Cosell from NFL Films. We were just talking a little bit about odds and betting and things like that. The Eagles are heavy favorites today against the Giants, almost 2 touchdown favorites according to our friends at mybookie.ag. MyBookie says the Eagles are 13.5-point favorites with an over/under of 43.5. Interestingly, the Eagles have only won 2 games this season by 14 or more points. They were both by 14. It was Week 3 Tampa, 25-11, and the Miami game that we discussed in Week 7, where they won 31-17. Most of their games this year have been pretty close games, even in the other than the 49ers loss, but even their losses as well. So, and obviously that one on Monday night was definitely a heartbreaker. All right, we're going to take a look around the NFL real quick in a segment that is sponsored by Garage Beer. It's beer-flavored beer. Find yours at drinkgaragebeer.com. Adam, I want to get to you on this. There's 3 head coaching jobs already open in the NFL. The Raiders, Chargers, and Panthers made moves even before the year ended to fire their head coaches. And are we looking at one of those years where there is just a groundswell of firings there the Monday after the season and a lot more head coach searching this offseason?
Yeah, I always call them were their questions. We'll leave it at that. Here are the teams that have major question marks about what's going to happen. Commanders are obvious. And I say questions because it's about expectations from ownership. Like the Chargers, they not only did they think they were going to be a playoff team, talking to them about what they thought the season would look like, they thought they could make a deep run. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen. So they fired Brandon Staley in season. Bears, yes, they're playing better football, but let's not forget, new president CEO Kevin Warren, who has worked in the NFL before. I talked to people who work with him. He's going to be heavily involved in football decisions, big ones. The quarterback and the head coach. Dennis Allen, the Saints, his future. Bill Belichick's obvious. That one seems ominous. And Mike Vrabel is a really good coach. They have a very bad roster. The people are starting to question about what's going on there. Yeah, so you asked your question, Geoff, about the potential coaching changes. There were 5, and I say only 5 last year. Since 1990, they're usually between 6 and 7. I think we could have as many as 8. You mentioned 3 already. 5 to 6 more if possible. It really depends on the offseason plan and where ownership is in terms of expectations. It's always about expectations. And look, Jeffrey Lurie's different. It's not only expectations. He gets involved with coaching decisions, assistant coaching decisions, as we know. So Doug Peterson got let go after the 2020 season. Jeff really preferred to keep him, but he was not in line with the coaching staff. And it's not always like that you have a very involved owner. Most owners don't get involved like that. It's just, hey, if the team wasn't good enough, they fire them. But in Philly, it's much different because the owner's more involved.
Yeah, and on that note, it'll be interesting to see the ownership with Washington, Josh Harris, the Sixers owner who now owns Washington, what he's going to do. I did not watch a second of that game yesterday between the Jets and the Commanders, but oh my God, that must have been something to watch, because that was about as crazy as it gets. But it ends for Washington in a similar fashion with a loss. So probably, I would think, a lot of changes coming for that franchise. All right, back to the Eagles on Monday against Seahawks. We saw the debut of Matt Patricia as the Eagles' new defensive play caller, not defensive coordinator. That's still Sean Desai. We'll talk about some of the differences and what we might expect today. While some might say that the Eagles under Patricia only allowed 20 points to the Seahawks, it is worth noting that Seattle was on a backup quarterback who missed some open receivers throughout the game, and that the Seahawks still managed to convert 4 3rd and 10s in the game, including 2 on their game-winning drive. So let's discuss some of just the structural differences and things that, Greg, were obvious to you with Matt Patricia calling the plays. What jumped out?
Well, just from a personnel standpoint, we'll start with that first. Big nickel was essentially their foundation defense, their foundational base defense. Big nickel meaning they played with 2 linebackers and 3 safeties. Okay, so they played with 3 safeties, and it was Blankenship, it was Brown, and it was Byard. So that was their foundational base defense. The other thing was far more dime. They played with 6 defensive backs on pretty much every 3rd down and other selected downs as well. So they played a lot more dime. That was clearly, something that was noticeable from a personnel standpoint. Then I think from a coverage standpoint, I thought they played a lot of man coverage. I thought they played some cover 1 robber, which is man, but they take one of the safeties and they drop him right in the middle as kind of a robber, right in the middle of the field. So, I thought that those things stood out to me. On that final touchdown drive, which was 10 plays by the Seahawks, they rushed 4 D linemen on all 10 plays. They never added a 5th rusher. They played predominantly man coverage concepts with 2-man and cover 1 robber being prevalent. But their 4-man D-line pass rush could not generate any pressure on lock, and that was kind of a microcosm in the last 5-6 games. They just don't generate any pressure, and they don't cover particularly well, so that's not a good combination.
Yeah, you got to do one or the other.
Yeah.
And I agree with Greg. Playing cover 1 and rushing 4 is as counterproductive as you can get, because you can't cover those guys forever. You just can't. Now, cover 2 men is a little bit different because you will have more time. It's just that DK Metcalf made James Bradberry look stupid on one of those plays. He had inside technique, Bradberry, but he gave him an outside move and broke in. It was, pretty good route. Bad technique by Bradberry, which is common. With that being said, I like the deployment of Keely Ringo. I thought that the young guy played well and he competed. I don't understand why so many guys. Like, I don't understand why we have to have Josh Jobe out there, Keely Ringo out there, sometime Ricks. I don't understand that portion of it. But overall, I thought that they competed more than they have under Sean Desai. Now, there's just one game you could say is versus the Seahawks, and they are not as good. The record shows to me that Sean Desai also played against the Commanders, which Commanders probably averaged 30-something points versus us. They're not a good team, but good teams have done well versus us. That's my point. Bad teams have done well versus us. That's my point. So those people that are making that argument of Sean Desai is only he did bad against really good teams. No, he's done bad versus bad teams too. Okay, so so I thought that Matt Patricia's team defensively, I thought that they played better.
One question for Greg. Ringo was out there. We know there were some knocks on Ringo off the field as well, coming out of Georgia. But the stuff that Geoff and I got was the degree of stiffness, would have trouble transitioning. It looked okay from my eyes. But how do you think Ringo did in this game?
You know what? I actually thought he looked a little better, because what you just said is exactly what I thought watching his tape. I thought his tape in college was very sketchy. Thought he was really stiff in his core. He struggled to stop. You have to be able to stop as a corner. He struggled to stop because he was so stiff in his core. I thought he looked a little better, and I know they're working with him because I know who's doing it. So I know they're working really hard with him on that. I thought he looked a little better. Ultimately, he was a 4th-round pick. So you're not necessarily expecting him to step right in as a rookie and be your starting corner. But the way this season has played out, with Slay now being hurt and Bradberry clearly struggling, you're looking for cornerbacks. And, he was a 4th-round pick. Ricks was an undrafted free agent. But I thought Ringo, let's put it this way. I'm anxious to see Ringo play more. Let's put it that way.
Good.
Yeah. They'll probably get that opportunity today. We'll see what happens and what their plans are, both structurally and also if they're going to make any personnel changes or switch up a role with James Bradberry, which we'll get to in a second. But, Jay, I want to go back to your point about being counterproductive. Why would you, in a game situation, 4th quarter like that, why would you play cover 1 man concept but only rush 4, right? And one thing I didn't catch until maybe later in the week when the All-22 came out is on the game-winning touchdown, from Locke to Jackson Smith and the Jigba, not only do they only rush 4, but the 2 interior rushers were Milton Williams and rookie Moro Ajomo. So you're only rushing 4, no sign of Fletcher Cox, no sign of Brandon Graham, no sign of Jalen Carter. Now, again, I like to defer to what Greg says. I'm sure coaches have a plan. They have an idea. They do what they do for a reason. But unless all those 3 guys were hurt for that one play, which I don't think was the case, that one I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around. What were your thoughts on that?
Sometimes you get caught up in rotations, and but it's up to the players, though. Here's the thing. There's rotations, and defensive line are not like, other positions, linemen, where they just stay on the entire time. And guys get used to their rotations. But I think that you as a player have to want to be in that moment, right, and wave your rotation off. And I'm pretty sure if Fletcher Cox waved his rotation off, I don't think that anyone would have a problem with that.
I don't think
I wouldn't sense that, right? I just wouldn't, because I've done it many times. The game's online, dude. Kick rocks. I'm staying in. That's how it should be.
Isn't there a game planning element throughout the week? If we're in a situation, 2-minute, whatever, we need our best pass rush, we're only going to rush 4 on a cover 1 where the rotation has to call. And I mean, don't the coaches have to see that?
Are you talking about the end of the game, Jeff?
Yeah,
on the game-winning touchdown pass.
Yeah, well, what happened was there was a 10-play drive, okay? The first 8 plays, Sweat and Reddick with the edge rushers and Cox and Carter were inside. That was the first 8 plays. I can't speak to what happened on the 9th and 10th. Maybe they were tired. Who knows? We don't know the answer to this. So you're right.
Sure, I thought about that any one of those 3 or 2 of those 3 could have been very tough. But you have 3 choices there because Brandon Graham has played on the inside, and even this year he's lined up.
I'm not saying your point's incorrect. I'm just saying that on the first 8 plays, it was Sweat, Reddick, Cox, and Carter. And and then, again, we don't know the answer to that.
Right. Goes back to Jason, probably your point, where if you're a veteran in that spot, even if you're tired, you say, Moro Ajomo, get that off the field.
That's when you're in shape. That's when you're in shape. You're ready to go. You want that. You understand it. You can sense it. I'm pretty sure that they probably would have came in on the next play, the 4th down play, right? Because it's probably been more important to them. But you don't always get that opportunity. So it's just a different generation as well. Like back in those, like certain things didn't happen, wouldn't take place. And then a coach, I've seen coaches call time out because their players weren't on the play, and they needed a break when the game was
right. That's a great point.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I just wonder what the discussion was like while they're Monday, Tuesday corrections, or I guess Tuesday or Wednesday corrections day. Like, we can't have this kind of situation again. Yes, I get it. They're on the field. We have to be more. I would hope that there would be a counter plan for the next time.
But let me tell you this. If you're getting pressure, you're more energized. So look, they weren't getting pressure with those guys in there. So what's the worst that can happen?
Did you think, Jason, were you surprised that Patricia did, that cover one man, no pressure, 4-man pressure. It's considering how Bradberry struggled mightily. Did that surprise you?
No, I just like that was Bradberry took full ownership of what he did in that play.
Mm-hmm.
And tell you the truth, I don't know if I were playing corner, and I don't play corner, if I wouldn't have did the same thing, right? Because you don't necessarily know if a team's going to take a shot on you. It's 3rd and 10 or 3rd and whatever it was. And he's like, dude, if I can get them into a 4th down, that'll be, let me try to win this game and by sitting on it. And he chose the wrong time. So
Right.
I don't always think that here's the thing I will say about Bradberry. If you know you're cooked, grab the dude. if you know you're in a situation where you're cooked, grab him.
Like the Super Bowl.
But I don't always say, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. I think you get a sense sometimes, because Asante would have been beaten in that situation as well. Because I tell you this, Asante would have been playing the sticks in that situation.
Right.
Trying to
foot the field.
That Jigba 29-yard touchdown, they actually called the same play on the first series.
Right.
From the same formation, and he threw the slant route to Metcalf, who was number 2 to Trips.
Mm-hmm.
And they had decided on that play that if they got that look again, the same look, that they were going to throw to Smith-Njigba, who was the boundary X. And they didn't get that same look until that play. And that, because the way it ended up playing out was Bradberry was in 0-man on Smith-Njigba, because the safety to that side, who I believe
down and play the back.
He came down and play the back, correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Blankenship was technically the post safety, and he was aligned on the opposite hash. So it's essentially, it became 0-man. Now, it's easy to look at this now, Jeff. And again, once you have the result, that stuff's easy. And we all know Bradberry hasn't played great. So I'm not defending Bradberry, but you're not thinking on 3rd and 10 that that's the throw that's going to be made.
Right. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about Bradberry and in this defense and what he can and can't do. Obviously, Slay being out has really hurt them overall because he's been their best corner. Bradberry is a guy the Eagles brought back after a All-Pro, Pro Bowl last year. I think 2nd team All-Pro he was. Now, the book on him, Adam, right, is that he was always better and more functional he's a zone corner. You want him playing zone. And people email us and ask us all the time, well, why are the Eagles playing man defense during this spot? Because he's a zone corner. But as we tell people, like, you can't just play zone the entire. You're not a Tampa 2 team. You're not just going to sit in a zone all day long. You have to. And Greg has always brought this out. Even with his zone, there are man concepts.
Yeah. So
we've seen Bradberry struggle a whole lot. The contract that has now become a big kind of talking point, though.
Yeah. Look, it's the question is going to be. It's very simple based on where we're at here, and particularly if Eagles have an early exit, and it becomes obvious that Bradberry can't be starter anymore. Then the question will be, what are they going to do with that $11 million that they own? It's fully guaranteed. Based on his option bonus and salary next year, it's the last year of guaranteed money. It may come down to that them eating it. No one would take his contract. The guy's a fading player. You don't trade for guys who barely could function as a starter anymore. He has regressed so significantly, and we've mentioned this many times. I mean, 2 or 3 teams told us last year, if we protect, we're going after 24. And I always laughed. I'm like, really, guys? Great year. He goes, it's because teams can't protect. Right. This year they can protect, and you're seeing what's happening.
And then, and at some point, they need to find out if Ringo, a 4th-round pick, can play. They need to find out if Ricks can play, because Ricks if he has any chance, he's an outside corner. He's not a slot corner.
Sure.
They need to get some young blood in here at corner. Now, they may have to draft guys again, but I mean, They need to find out if who they have on their roster can presently play, because they need to figure out what they're going to do moving forward.
Yeah, so, there isn't a guy in Philadelphia that plays football that I feel worse for than James Bradberry.
Yeah,
I agree.
The reason I feel, because it's like he outperformed last year his ability because of the pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone took it as, we have the best corners in the league. And it was sort of like, remember that Eli Ricks game where people were putting on social media with the Dolphins, the targets? I'm like, dude, shut up. putting all over social media, like the targets. Tyreek Hill, 5 targets, or Eli Ricks, 0 catches.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm like, that's outlandish. Stop it.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true just because, and it's the same way with the Eagles. Like you guys have been saying, like you go out and you play games and you win close games playing bad. Eventually, you're going to get to this point where we are.
Yep.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you guys didn't have glaring weaknesses before. They just come to roost now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the same is true for James Bradberry and the style of play. I just feel bad because we're expecting the guy that has limited ability when it comes to man and running ability in general, not because he's older, because he got drafted and he couldn't run that fast, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're asking him to do things and be Jalen Ramsey. You're expecting things from him, and I just think that it's kind of unfair.
Right. So let me ask you this:
it's like Geoff, it's like expecting me as a player to go out and go out on the outside and get yards.
I wouldn't have put it past you, Jay. I mean, you could rough up a good cornerback.
Yeah. Unless it's slants, curls, and digs, that's the only thing you're going to get.
Oh, that's funny. I heard somebody...
If I'm not going deep, if I can't go deep, you can't run a comeback, right? So eventually a team's going to realize that, hey, he only can break in. So yes, yeah, you have a game where you have 80 yards.
Are you saying, Jay, that you wouldn't be confused for Tyreek Hill? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying, Greg. There's no way.
Yeah, it's funny. Jay, I heard
Bradberry shouldn't be confused with Jalen Ramsey or another guy that has.
And if I could just, Geoff, I don't want to take your spot here, but I think the transition also needs to be the pass rush. That's the bottom line. They've not been able to rush the quarterback.
Right.
And that's been true most of the year. They've not been able to, we've talked about this in a number of weeks, that if, in August, if you said, okay, what are the Eagles going to be great at this year? Everybody would have said their pass rush.
Sure. But I would say to what Jason was saying, right, the way, first of all, I don't think Hassan Reddick and Sweat, and I think you would agree with this, these guys didn't get bad suddenly overnight. Right.
Players, you're right. Yeah.
Right. James Bradberry was helped last year by the pass rush. And I do wonder if the pass rush this year is getting less help from the secondary and not able to get home like they did last year because they really are not. I mean, Slay is out. Bradberry is struggling. They've had the different players at safety as opposed to last year. I feel like those guys, you can make an argument, are being hurt by the back end a little more.
Well, you're being hurt by the back end and the second level in general.
Yes.
Remember, we talked about how T.J. Edwards couldn't run, but he was a great guy when it came to coverage last year.
Mm-hmm.
And how they played in coverage, the middle group, and also the back end. Marcus Epps playing really well, and other guys playing well. So, with that being said, yeah, are they being let down? But I also think that they, for the most part, our guys have been underwhelming when it comes to one-on-one situations. They have been. And that could be a tip that everybody saw. Like, hey, listen, when this guy lines up here, he does this. When this is the case, we don't necessarily know. But what I do know is that when they have one-on-ones, they're not always winning. I've actually seen our tight ends block these guys one-on-one.
Now, by the way, today against this O-line, they'll probably get 7 sacks. Yeah.
Well, I was just about to bring that up, Greg. I mean,
awesome.
I wonder, do the Giants watch the tape and say, all right, there's two things Mike Kafka says that, right?
They don't have a right tackle that can block Hassan Reddick.
Right.
They don't have a right tackle that can block Hassan Reddick.
They don't. So do they look at the tape and say, all right, this is not as like we might be able to get maybe 1 or 2 balls. We might be able to pop a few deep on them because they're just not as tenacious as last year? Or do the Giants say, we're not even going to we're going to keep a tight end in, we're going to keep protection in, we're going to methodically try to move the ball like we've done the last few weeks? Or, with nothing to lose really because they're out of it, do they try to work the Eagles defense a little bit with Darren Waller now healthy and with Jalen Hyatt adding some speed, Greg? I mean, you've watched how they've played last week.
Well,
when you've got nothing to lose.
But first of all, you got to protect, okay? And if you can't, keep in mind that we mentioned the Green Bay game in which DeVito was not sacked, but in 4 of his 5 starts, he's been sacked a total of 27 times. Mm-hmm. So he's been sacked an awful lot. And at the end of the day, their pass game is limited by the need to help the O-line in pass protection with running backs and tight ends. There's too many snaps in which they cannot send all 5 eligible receivers into primary routes. And, we've talked about their pass rush all year. And if they have a great game today, that doesn't mean they're cured. But one would have to assume that the players who are good players, and that's maybe what they keep counting on, the fact that these guys are good players still in their prime, other than Fletcher, and Brandon Graham, who, obviously has had a marvelous career, but, Sweat's still a young player. Reddick's a young player. Carter has shown, dominance. Davis is a phenomenal run defender. He needs work as a pass rusher. Milton Williams has had a lot of good snaps this year. One would have to believe these guys didn't just lose it. So today, could they have a big, big day? If the Giants were to choose to block with 5, they absolutely could. My guess is the Giants won't block with 5.
Right.
And if they don't block with 5, you have enough speed on the outside in order to hurt you. Because Slayton has played good versus us in times past. And
Hyatt can run.
Slayton can run too.
What was really interesting is they hardly played any snaps of 12 personnel last week, given that Waller was back. They pretty much stayed in 11. They only had a couple of snaps the entire game with Waller and Bellinger on the field together.
That is interesting. Hey, I wondered, with the structure that we saw last week, I believe you said that there was a lot more 2-man cover, like 2 safeties deep or 2 shell coverages from Matt Patricia.
It's 2-man, yeah. So you got two back-end safeties and man-to-man across the board on the 5 eligibles.
Right, and I would imagine Kevin Byard and Blankenship were the guys that were deep, right? With Brown more. No.
Byard played the tight end, and Brown and Blankenship were deep.
Okay, so part of me wondered with Byard, he's been their tight end guy in those sub packages for a while. Yeah. If maybe they wanted to change Bradberry's role, would they put him on tight ends and maybe move Byard deep or change things around?
As Jay knows, 2-man helps corners tremendously because they can play it totally differently. They do not have to worry about getting beat over the top. In fact, as Jay knows, the way 2-man is taught, you're essentially letting him get on top of you a little bit. You're not worried about him running by you. It's built in that you're going to either tailgate or undercut the route, as the terms are, when you're a 2-man corner. So 2-man really helps your corners. The only issue with 2-man is if the quarterback can run and leave the pocket, because then you have no one there to play the quarterback.
Right.
So let me ask the question to Jason. When you are studying leading up to a game, and particularly with your receivers coach, in this case could be David Culley, when you see a guy like Bradberry out there, let's say you were playing on the outside, right? Would you say to Culley, I want this guy, we got to get plays where I could get after this guy because I know I could beat him? Does that happen?
Before you get there, the offensive coordinator and the coaching staff in general has already found the guy that they want to attack.
Gotcha.
So we don't necessarily have to go out there and say, hey, coach, you didn't see this already. No, they've spent hours upon hours by the time it's got to our attention on that Wednesday that this is the guy they want to attack. And we'll know it in the game plan because everything is called over there. Right?
Sure. No, but would you say, let's say it's in a game, hey, I beat this guy already. Like, get me the ball. Like, are there times you go, I know I got this guy. If you get me the ball, like that stuff happen.
There is times where you say you can say to a coach, but you got to have a certain rapport with the coach because every receiver and every tight end is always open, right? Yeah. So you got to be able to judge your relationship with the coach and that you're just not saying things and that he actually believes in your ability to study. Or be able to assess. So that's one thing. So everybody's always saying something to the coach. His friends gave him a few plays before the game started, right? So right. That's just the nature of the beast, right? So, but if you have a guy, you say, hey, coach, he can't cover me. Just let you know that he can't cover me. Sometimes he get to you, sometimes he won't. It all depends on who the offense coordinator is. If the game plan is working in a different capacity, he doesn't have to get over there. But there are times where I knew without him telling me, hey, Jason, this game's going to be on you until we get our stability back. I knew that, right? We come out in the game, it's raining and or it's windy, or Deshaun and Macklin or somebody dropped the first 2 opening passes. Coach Reed is already, he's like, I'm calling the next 5 plays for Jason. That's just how it was.
Remember
He had that.
They trust you.
Yeah, just to get us back stable. Now the guy catches, because once guys drop balls, it's everybody's like, oh, I don't want to drop one. So it kind of becomes a big thing in guys' minds, right? So you need to get the guy the ball that's the most secure, and then it'll rebuild that confidence back.
Wouldn't you, if you're Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll, who are responsible for the structure and the game planning, play calling, don't you say, okay, I know Jalen Hyatt's a rookie, but he's their fastest guy. I know they don't call a lot of shot plays, but when they do, wouldn't you get Hyatt involved when Bradberry's on the field? Because I just feel like Bradberry is a sitting duck here.
Well, yeah, Bradberry and Slayton. Slayton can run. That's the thing. Slayton has deep playability, right? So any of those guys that you get them one-on-one where Bradberry has to open up his hips and run, you're at an advantageous situation for any receiver. So, and every team has known this, and they're able to get to him now. Like I said, the pass rush isn't getting there. It's advantage Giants receivers. But check this out. Let me say something. Bradberry's not the only one. I think Eli Ricks is an automatic catch. I think that our linebackers.
I think Roby has struggled at times, by the way.
I think there's a bunch of guys. I don't think you have to avoid anyone.
Yeah. And to your point, Jim, linebacker, we talk if Nick Morrow either doesn't play today or tries to push through it and has to come out, you've got Shaq Leonard, who just joined the team a week ago, who was cut, right, by a team that wants to pay him not to play, and then maybe Ben Van Sumeren.
Franklin is playing pretty amazing, though, too.
What's that?
Franklin's playing pretty amazing right now
for the Colts. But the point is, the ultimate point is that Leonard this year has not played a lot of snaps.
Yeah,
so right. Today,
and I don't think his tape jumped out last week as, oh wow, he looked like this great rangy linebacker. No, I mean
if he has to play 65 snaps, he hasn't done that in I don't know how long.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So to get to your point,
they're in a tough spot there.
Yeah. To get to your point, Adam, I don't think that Bradberry is a sitting duck, but I think in pass coverage, Bradberry is not responsible for all of the yards that we give up, all the touchdowns that we give up, all the third downs we give up. So I think that everybody that's playing our team is like, yo, this is one of those teams that we can get what we want from anywhere.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, if you did the hot cold graph, I mean, I think the middle of the field in particular would be sort of the hot zone for opposing quarterbacks, because data shows that that's where you've really been able to hit. Obviously the Seahawks got the sideline that one or two times in the game, but for the most part this year, a lot of teams, the 49ers, I don't think they threw a ball in the air outside of the wheel route to McCaffrey, right? I don't think Purdy put the ball in the air more than 20 yards on any other throw. I mean, it was a lot of that middle. Yep. So I think you're making a good point. I mean, the data shows, and we had our analytics intern, Sam Finkel, do a great job of breaking down Bradberry's season. And 7 times he's had a passer rating against him over 112 and 6 times over 120. So he's clearly not having the type of season he's supposed to have for the money that is being paid. But again, the overall defense and backs, there's a lot, I guess context is what you're saying, Jason, that there's a lot more that goes into it than just one guy struggling. That would be easy, because then you could just say, we're going to bench this guy, play another guy who we think could either hold the fort down or play better, and then we're all fixed. But this thing has been a front-to-back issue for quite a while now.
And you can cover one guy. One guy is not a problem. One guy isn't a problem.
Right.
When there's multiple guys, that's when it becomes a problem.
Definitely. All right, we're going to start wrapping things up.
Yeah, just to finish up, Jeff, you know, obviously we spent a lot of time talking about what the tape shows. They're playing a team today that, yes, they've competed, but it's a team that has some clearly defined weaknesses that the Eagles could be very capable of exploiting. And it's, you know, I don't know what people's scores were, you know, but that's not my point. My point is that could the Eagles today come back and win big? They certainly could. You know, I mean, it's not like they don't have players on their team.
Right.
You know, I mentioned that, you know, they don't have a right tackle that could block Reddick. Could Jalen Hurts make 3 special plays today? Like, you know, like the touchdown he threw, I guess it was against Buffalo, where he rolled left and hit Zacchaeus. Could he do that? Even if he's not hitting basic reads, could he do that twice in the game? Sure he can. Could he run for 30 yards on a critical play? Sure he can. Now, that doesn't mean that the other issues still don't exist, but in today's game, those things could easily happen, and they could win by 20 points.
Yeah.
I think it's.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like the Eagles can win this game without their A game. They should be able to win this game with even a B type game. The Giants to win.
But then again, you watch the Bills and the Chargers on Saturday night. You never know how it. I remember Jay talking last year, and you asked him when the Eagles were, rolling along and beating everybody by, killing people, and they play some poor opponents. Right. And Jay made the point. I've never forgotten this because I've always believed it too, just through my career. And Jay would always say, "Hey, these guys are NFL players." Just because they may not be, the team might not be great or for whatever the reason, these guys are NFL players.
And they can come out that day and be special that day.
I think it was the Chicago game, where Jalen wound up getting hurt in that game as well. But that was a tough game for them.
Here's the one thing that everybody's eyes would be totally different toward Jalen this year if these things happen. If Jalen hits any of these shots, it would kind of rectify some of the things that he is not doing well. And last year, these 50-50 balls that he's been putting up, the guys were catching them. They're not catching them this year.
Yep. Right.
So
quickly. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jay. You can finish that.
No, you're good.
You had one of those pregnant pauses there, so I wasn't sure if you were still thinking or you were just telling me.
Oh, you're fine.
All right, we are going to finish this off. We'll get into Tommy DeVito in 1 second, a little bit. I want to remind everybody, James and Zach, our great production team is behind the wheels again, bringing Inside the Birds pregame live to you in high definition with new graphics, videos, and more. And we just want to thank them, wish them a happy holidays, and really appreciate all that they put in behind the scenes to bring this great show to life. If you want to reach out to either one of them or both of them to have them tag team and bring your show to life, you can just email us at insidethebirds@gmail.com, and we'll certainly pass it along to them. As far as Tommy DeVito, when he's not kissing babies and helping peddle pizzas up in North Jersey, he has been the Giants quarterback. Hey man, I cannot knock this guy. He is taking advantage of his 5 minutes of fame in a way that he should be.
The guy was not a big recruit coming out of high school, even though he went to a big time high school. He wasn't
Don Bosco.
Yeah, he wasn't great at Illinois, and he was undrafted, and he's having a blast.
Yeah. So I guess when you guys watch him, you talked a little bit. They're careful. They don't ask him to do too much. He can play within himself. Is there anything that you would consider a threat today? Would you just expect more of the same, Greg, or do you think they let him open it up if they're able to block it up a little bit?
I don't think they're going to let him open it up in the way. I don't know what you mean by open it up, but they're not going to come out tossing it all over the yard if that's what you mean. I mean, I think what they're going to do, which they've done in games, is give him some shot play opportunities based on where they are on the field and based on the game situation. And they'll block it up as best they can, because normally shot plays it's 6 or 7, at times 8-man protection. They'll do that. They've done that a couple of times. In each game, and they try to take a shot, whether it's a Slayton or Hyatt, whether it's a vertical route or whether it's a deeper flood concept. They had a beautiful one against New England a few weeks ago where he hit Hyatt for 29 yards on a flood concept on a deep over. But they're not going to. That's not going to be their game plan. Look, he's not throwing a lot of balls in these games. I mean, but he runs a lot, and I don't know this for a fact, but I firmly believe that they tell him, if you don't see it, run, because, he's run the ball really well, and they have the design run game with him. He's not an explosive athlete, but he's a functional athlete who gains yards, and the design run game has been a factor for them.
Right. Greg, the Green Bay game, did they do anything to help him? That's a game he didn't get sacked. Did they do anything schematically, or was just he got out of the way?
No, they didn't really do. I mean, they do what they've been doing, but Green Bay, and Green Bay doesn't have a bad pass rush, but their secondary's been poor, as we've seen. But no, it's just one of those games. I mean, in all the other games, he gets sacked a lot. And that's what you have to hope for today. That number one, you got to hope you get them in longer yardage situations. They've not been able to run the ball. Barkley has one or two runs a game that gives him decent yardage, but they've not been able to sustain offense with the run game, which is a function of both the offensive line and the fact that Barkley's not really that kind of runner.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the Green Bay game where he was not sacked, he's been sacked on average. I don't know how he wakes up in the morning.
Well, 27 times in 4. As I said, he started 5 games. Other than the Green Bay game, 0 sacks, and the other 4 games, 27 sacks. That's a lot of sacks.
That is quite a bit of sacks. All right. Well, it's time to wrap this show up. Do what we do best, or worst, as some might argue. So we will get into our score predictions and our players of the game. We'll start off on our player of the game. And I'm going to start with you, Jason Avant. Who is going to be the player of the game today in this Eagles-Giants clash?
I think it's going to be our most consistent offensive player, which is Devontae Smith. And Devontae hadn't practiced, hadn't had the reps, which means that his legs are more rested than everybody else's. That's all that it means for a game. And I believe that he'll have a good game. And I'm starting to think that, man, he needs a lot more targets.
Devontae Smith needs more targets, could be the player of the game. Now, Greg, real quick, you were mentioning Banks. Deonte Banks has been sort of a cover corner, like he'll move
at times
the number 1 receiver. Right. So if let's say he does that, so then the other corner on Devontae Smith today would most likely be
Jackson,
Adoree Jackson. Okay. How's Adoree Jackson?
Their slot corner is Cordell Flott, who's a second-year player out of LSU, whose tape I really like coming out of college. He's just thin, but he's a good player. Just one thing about the Giants, real quick, that you have to be real aware of with Martindale. He loves blitzing his safeties, McKinney and Pinnock, and they come off the edge, and you really have to be aware of that.
And that was the point that I wanted to make earlier with Adam, is that if they're going to get if the line's going to get beat anywhere, I believe that they get beat on the edges, right? Not communicating off the edge, some defensive back nickel, that type of thing. Not necessarily in the centers. Okay.
So Devontae Smith over the Giants today. Maybe a few deep posts with the blitzing against a blitzing safety. We'll see. All right. Let's go to Greg for your player of the game.
I picked Swift, and the reason I did is usually teams, if they feel that they may be better than the opponent, and my sense is the Eagles probably deep down feel that, just to stabilize their offense. Look, they know the way that Hurts is playing. They know it better than we do, okay? It's not, fans can talk about it all day long. Coaches know. They're with guys every day. They know this stuff. It's not their job to have a conversation with public discourse, but they know. So normally when you try to stabilize your offense, you try to get the run game working. So I pick Swift just because my sense is that might be their approach. Now, they could take the exact opposite approach and feel like if we get ahead 17-3, early in the second quarter, the Giants can't score. So they could easily go the other way and try to throw it all over the yard. They could take that route, but I'm gonna go the other way, and that's why I pick Swift.
No, I like it. Makes a lot of sense. And they always say great minds think alike, right, Adam? Who's your player of the game?
Yeah, one of these weeks when I pick Swift, he's actually going to have a big game. It's been a while. Boy, he got off to such a great start this season. I'm like, just what we saw in training camp is going to happen. Oops, it's been very slow for him. It's not his fault. It's structure. It's no checkdowns. It's really very little design stuff for him. Again, not what we saw in training camp when it seemed like every day, Jeff, you and I would go. We're like, do we need a chart practice because the targets here are ridiculous? Yeah. We're not seeing that, and it's disappointing. But this is a game where they're going to get a lead. They're going to get things done, and as you guys said, look, they're always capable of blowing them out, and they could erupt because the one thing the Eagles have is a great pass target group, and Swift needs to be a part of it starting today.
Yeah, and your point on catching the ball and maybe being more involved in that regard. As Jason Avant has pointed out many times in the Q&A show, the screen game is not the fault of the running back or the pass catcher in this regard. Yeah. It's been the guys who are supposed to make the lanes for the pass catcher who have not done their job. All right, my player of the game. You guys are missing the boat, man. This one was about as easy as it gets. It's Boston Scott. How can it not be? Boston Scott. It's the Giant Slayer. I don't care if he only has 3 touches or if he has 33 touches. He's going to make the most of it, and he always is good for a big play against the New York Giants. So that is my player of the game. I didn't even have to put a whole lot of thought in that, as if anybody could tell.
Question: are they going to spin the wheel, Jeff, or is this the Boston? You know how they with him, it's like every 7 games they spin the wheel.
Got to get him involved now.
Yeah,
yeah. I think this has got to be more deliberate. They got to know.
Oh,
like I said, we got to get this guy at least 10 times in the game today.
Well, the luck is the luck is that he based on history, he's probably going to score today, and that generally should mean that they're going to get a nice lead. We'll see.
The only thing that would tell you who he would not score today is the mythological law of averages, which doesn't really exist. But at some point, he's going to play against the team or against the Giants and not score a touchdown. All right. As we mentioned before, the Eagles 13.5-point favorites, according to our friends at my bookie. Over under, what did I say the over under was? 43, I believe, is what it is. 43.5, 13.5-point favorites. So I'm just going to go in order of who's done the best job picking, best to least this year. So I'll be last with my terrible 7-7 record.
I should have stayed with Seattle last week.
Yeah, man, you guys hurt yourselves. Changing your picks last week from Seattle to the Eagles. Greg
stayed fast.
Am I leading, Jeff?
Yes.
Oh, all right. So I'm going first. I believe. I'm going to pick the Eagles, and I think I picked 23-13.
You did.
I could see it being more than that, but the way they've been playing on offensively, I just didn't feel comfortable getting up in the 30s.
Yeah. Okay. So you have the Eagles winning. They don't cover, and it's a little bit underneath the over/under total. But Greg has the Eagles winning. Adam, you're next best. Your 11-3 record.
Yeah, I'm feeling similar in that the opportunity is going to be there for them to blow this team out. But because we don't trust this team, they just don't play up to the talent level on offense. They'll win it. It'll be somewhat a ho-hum game. I've got it. Eagles 24. Giants 13, which would mean they're not covering the number, but it's not because the Giants are going to play so well. The Eagles will play down in the competition here. There
you go. And you're back to being Mr. Under with that total of 37. Yep. So all is right in the world. Jason, you're next.
What's my record there so I can know what I got to do in order to get back?
The Eagles record is the same.
Change.
Yeah, no changing. You're gonna have James Zach get mad at you with the graphics. All right, 10-4. You're 10-4. You're only 2 games behind Greg and 1 behind Adam, so you got some time here.
No, only 3 games. I got 3 games.
And the playoffs.
I got to go Eagles here. I'm going to go 30-20 Eagles. I think that they get back on track offensively, maybe even a defensive touchdown. We'll see.
All right, so you're a little over, but it's not a cover for the Eagles. So that's 3 no covers for you guys so far. And maybe this is why I'm only 7-7, because I'm terrible at this. I did pick the Eagles to win. I think they are going to cover. I think they win 28-13. So my good math would tell me that's a cover and an under. So it is a clean sweep for the Eagles today, according to this panel. We'll see how it goes. As always, a big thanks to our friends at Garage Beer, My Bookie, HelloFresh, Game Time, James and Zach, all of our great sponsors, Manscaped as well. Everybody, hope you had a great Christmas and continue to have a great Christmas. Make sure you check out our coverage of today's game immediately after on Inside the Birds post-game live. It'll be myself, Adam, and of course, former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor right here on YouTube and our other Inside the Birds socials. Check out our coverage from Andrew DeCecco on insidethebirds.com. For Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching another Inside the Birds pregame live. Enjoy your holiday. Enjoy the game.